What if I told you that everything we thought we knew about Seth Rollins was about to change forever? That the man who burned it down, who walked through fire, who led WWE through eras of chaos and evolution, may never walk the same again. That behind the silence, behind the smiles, behind the pride, something far more devastating has been unfolding. On a quiet Tuesday afternoon, while fans scrolled through social media, hungry for SummerSlam rumors and backstage scoops, WWE dropped a time bomb. Not with pyrotechnics. Not in the ring. But through the calm, composed voice of the one man who never speaks unless it matters, Paul Triple H Levesque. In a single breath, Triple H did what no one else dared. He broke the silence. And in doing so, he changed everything. Because when it comes to Seth Rollins, this isn't just another injury. This isn't a twisted ankle, a storyline suspension, or a rest and recharge sabbatical. This is a career-threatening knee injury. Real. Raw. And horrifying. And it comes at a moment when WWE needed Seth more than ever. But here's what they didn't expect: the silence around his injury was hiding more than physical pain. There's backstage panic. Confusion. Rumors of creative collapse. And the very real question: has the visionary burned too bright for too long? In this video, we're going to unpack every word of Triple H's announcement and explore what's really happening behind the curtain. From the doctor's diagnosis to the future of Raw's main event scene, from Seth Rollins' own mental state to the emotional fallout inside his family, this story is bigger than a return. It's about redemption. Or maybe, it's about finality. Because while the world waits for Rollins to walk back through that curtain, the truth is, there's no guarantee he ever will. And if he doesn't? What does that mean for WWE? For Becky Lynch? For Roman Reigns? For the creative landscape we thought we understood? So let's start at the beginning. Not when the injury happened, but when the silence did. Because when a man like Triple H waits weeks to speak, you have to ask, what was he afraid of? Why now? Why this moment? And why does it feel like the words he spoke were only half the story? At exactly 12:37 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, WWE's official X account published a statement. Simple. Polished. Corporate. WWE COO Paul Triple H Levesque has released an official update on Seth Rollins' medical status. After careful evaluation and consultation with medical experts, Rollins will be unable to compete at SummerSlam due to a knee injury sustained during a live WWE event. That was the headline. But hidden beneath that cold press release was a storm. Let's pause. Because to truly understand the weight of this moment, we have to rewind past the announcement. Past the MRI. Back to the arena. Back to that sickening sound of a body hitting the mat wrong. Back to the moment Seth clutched his knee and didn't bounce back up. He didn't finish the match. He didn't talk smack on the mic. He didn't flash that confident smirk. He just lay there. Silent. And in WWE, silence is the scariest sound of all. Because it means it's not part of the script. Weeks went by. Fans begged for answers. Where was Seth? Was it a work? Was he hiding? Was this the setup for a heroic comeback? But behind closed doors, something else was happening. Triple H was holding meetings. Doctors were being flown in. Legal advisors were on standby. And in Stamford, the mood was shifting from anticipation to dread. Because Rollins wasn't healing. He wasn't day-to-day. He was barely walking. And then came the real question: do we tell the world now, or do we wait? And for a while, Triple H chose to wait. Because maybe he believed. Maybe he thought the MRI would be wrong. That the swelling would go down. That Seth, the Iron Man of modern wrestling, would beat the odds like he always did. But this time, the odds won. In a private Zoom call with WWE executives and medical advisors, sources say Triple H's voice broke. Not publicly. But in private. Because he knew what this meant. Rollins wasn't just another superstar. He was the guy. The face of Monday Night Raw. The workhorse. The symbol of stability in an industry fueled by chaos. And when your symbol breaks, what's left? Now here's what Triple H didn't say in that statement. He didn't say how severe the fracture really was. He didn't say that doctors warned of permanent cartilage damage. He didn't say that the timetable wasn't 3 months, but 9. And he didn't say that there's already talk, whispers in production rooms, that Seth may never return full-time again. Because even the strongest knees only bend so far. And sometimes they snap. So let's ask the question WWE won't. Is Seth Rollins done? Is this it? Will his return be one last match, or a goodbye speech? What do we call a visionary who can no longer walk the path? And how does Triple H, the man who once mentored Rollins, fought beside him, then against him, carry the guilt of that reality? Because make no mistake, this is personal. Triple H didn't just manage Seth's career. He chose him. He crowned him. He put the future of WWE on his back, and now that back is breaking. Not metaphorically. Physically. And emotionally. And then there's Becky. Because what happens when two icons share one home, and one begins to fall? We'll get to that later. But for now, understand this. Triple H didn't speak until he had to. And what he said was rehearsed. Sanitized. Strategic. But we don't do sanitized here. We do truth. We do pain. We do legacy. And Seth Rollins is at the center of all three. So over the next chapters, we're going to piece together the story that WWE won't tell you. We'll speak to insiders. We'll examine medical reports. We'll decode Triple H's press release word for word. And we'll show you how this injury might not just change one man's life. It could reshape WWE's future entirely. Because when you take out a king, someone new always rises. But the throne? It never forgets who sat in it first. And neither will we. It wasn't supposed to happen that way. Not to him. Seth Rollins had walked into thousands of arenas. He'd danced between ropes, fought legends, endured table crashes, steel chair shots, and hellacious ladder matches that most men wouldn't survive. And each time, he got back up. Bloodied? Sure. Bruised? Always. Broken? Never. Until now. The night of the injury started like any other marquee Monday Night Raw: electric lights, roaring crowd, a main event slot featuring the visionary himself. Seth Rollins was defending more than just pride. He was carrying the entire show, once again, on his surgically repaired back. Fans were on their feet, arms raised to the rhythm of his entrance theme, singing along like a choir in a sacred temple. He wore gold. A shimmering, phoenix-like robe that sparkled under the lights. A nod to his resilience. A warning to his enemies. This wasn't just a match. This was a statement. But statements come with risk. And that night, fate demanded a receipt. Rollins was set to face Bronson Reed, a man nearly twice his size, explosive, unpredictable, and fresh off a brutal run of backstage assaults. Tensions had been building for weeks. Reed had called Seth overrated. Soft. A dancing puppet in designer clothes. Rollins, in response, didn't say a word. He simply smiled, let the crowd sing, and then promised in a backstage interview to break the giant down to size. And for the first half of that match, he did. The pace was blistering. Seth darted around the ring like a conductor, hitting springboard knees, super kicks, and lightning-quick counters. Reed stumbled. The crowd roared. The tempo was rising toward a crescendo. Until it wasn't. It happened in a blink. Reed charged. Rollins leaped. Mid-air collision. Awkward landing. Then silence. Seth clutched his right knee, immediately. Not like a cell. Not like an angle. It was real. The camera cut away. Then zoomed in. Then froze. The referee rushed to his side, crossed his arms in the dreaded X signal. The universal sign in wrestling for real injury. The music stopped. The commentary table, so loud a moment ago, suddenly fell into a cold, eerie hush. Michael Cole whispered, This doesn't look good, folks." Corey Graves said nothing. Not even he had the words. What happened next wasn't scripted. It wasn't planned. And it sure wasn't in the rundown sheet backstage. WWE medical staff poured out from the side. Becky Lynch was seen pacing just behind the LED boards, her eyes locked on the ring, lips murmuring something under her breath. Security kept fans back, but you could still hear it. Is it real? No, not him. Rollins lay flat on the mat. One hand over his face. The other still gripping his knee. Every time he tried to sit up, he winced and fell back. And for the first time in a long time, Seth Rollins looked human. Fragile. Producers huddled. The match was called off. Bronson Reed was escorted out, visibly shaken. Not in celebration. Not even in heel heat. Just silence. A stretcher was wheeled out, but Rollins waved it off. He wouldn't go out like that. Not in front of them. Not in front of his people. Instead, with the help of 3 trainers and a referee under each arm, he hobbled his way to the ramp. Limping. 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 And every single step echoed louder than his entrance ever had. That walk up the ramp is already being called the loneliest moment in Monday Night Raw history. Fans online compared it to Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 14. To Daniel Bryan's concussion collapse in 2014. To Edge's walk away in 2011. But even those comparisons feel hollow. Because this wasn't retirement. This was robbery. Robbery by fate. By a twist of physics. By one bad landing after a decade of perfect ones. Backstage, the mood was grim. Sources say Seth was taken immediately into the trainer's room, where he was placed on a gurney and iced. Becky stayed with him, refusing to leave. She reportedly whispered, "You're going to be okay, you're okay, you've come back before." But this time? He didn't answer. He just stared. At the ceiling. At the lights. At the echoes of the music he didn't get to finish dancing to. Triple H arrived within the hour. He had been watching from gorilla position. The man who once raised Rollins' hand when he cashed in Money in the Bank at WrestleMania. The man who turned against him in 2016. The man who then watched him rise, again and again. He didn't speak. Not then. He just placed a hand on Rollins' shoulder. Then walked out of the room. A single nod. And that was it. By midnight, WWE's internal communication confirmed the worst. Seth had suffered a suspected patellar fracture. A follow-up MRI was scheduled for the next morning. SummerSlam was now in question. Raw's next month of storylines were erased from the whiteboard. And just like that, WWE's most consistent performer was on the shelf. But this is more than just an injury. This is the domino that could tip over an entire era. Because you don't just replace Seth Rollins. You don't just rewrite the show around him in a day. He was the connective tissue. The anchor. The bridge between generations. He had beef with Reigns. History with Cody. Heat with Punk. A potential match with Gunther. Every feud of meaning flowed through him. And now? It was all unraveling. That night, as fans left the arena in stunned silence, one child held a homemade sign high above his head. It read, "Seth, you got this." He never got to show it to Rollins. But maybe, somehow, Rollins saw it anyway. Because even as his leg failed him, the love never did. In WWE, silence can speak louder than 1,000 promos. And when the man behind the curtain, Paul Triple H Levesque, goes quiet, people notice. Because silence, in the world of wrestling, is never accidental. It's calculated, measured, strategic. And in the days following Seth Rollins' shocking injury, the silence from Triple H became deafening. No tweet. No statement. No appearance. No reassurance. Not a single word. The CEO of World Wrestling Entertainment, the man who had built Monday Night Raw around Seth Rollins' very existence, vanished. And it terrified everyone. Because when the architect of the WWE product disappears in the middle of chaos, it means something bigger is happening. Something that couldn't be explained in a post-show interview. Let's rewind to the 48 hours after the incident. The WWE universe was buzzing. Fan theories exploded online. #PrayForRollins trended worldwide. TikToks were reposting the footage of the awkward landing in slow motion, frame by frame, trying to decode just how bad it really was. And WWE? Stone cold quiet. Backstage, insiders say production teams were instructed not to mention Rollins on air. His video packages were pulled. Graphic overlays promoting his match at SummerSlam were quietly deleted from WWE.com. And then there was Triple H, holed up in his office, canceling media appearances, declining internal interview requests. According to sources within WWE Creative, his exact words to his team were, "Until we know what we're dealing with, we say nothing. Not a word. I'll handle this." It was a statement not of apathy, but of protection. Because Triple H understood what Seth Rollins meant to this company. And he knew the damage that the wrong statement could do. You see, Paul Levesque isn't just a boss. He's a guardian. A strategist. A man who knows that words have weight, and once they leave your mouth, they can't be taken back. And so, for nearly 3 weeks, he said nothing. He watched as the wrestling media speculated endlessly. He watched as fans began to wonder whether WWE was hiding something worse. He watched as Becky Lynch took subtle jabs at the silence on social media. And he watched the countdown clock to SummerSlam tick down, with no Seth Rollins in sight. Internally, people began to worry. Was the silence a smokescreen? Was Seth's injury even worse than reported? Or, was Triple H buying time for something else? Here's where the story takes a darker turn. According to Backstage insiders, those 3 weeks were filled with closed-door meetings, emergency creative rewrites, and heated calls with WWE's legal and PR teams. The internal report leaked to press days later revealed just how severe the injury was. MRI confirmed grade 3 patellar tendon rupture, with accompanying meniscus tearing. Surgery required. Rehabilitation period, projected 9 to 11 months. Let that sink in. 9 to 11 months. Not days. Not weeks. And certainly not enough time for a SummerSlam return. Triple H had to make a choice. Announce the truth, and watch the entire creative direction of Monday Night Raw implode. Or stay silent, and risk backlash for hiding something so important from fans. It was a lose-lose scenario. And Triple H, the master of control, was finally out of time. The breaking point came on a Thursday afternoon. Sources say Vince McMahon himself, still involved in select high-level decisions, called Paul and asked the question no one dared. "Are you going to say something? Or do we let the dirt sheets control the story?" That was the moment Triple H decided to speak. Not to deflect. Not to redirect. But to own it. And so, on a quiet Friday, WWE posted the statement heard around the wrestling world. Short. Surgical. Bare. After consultation with our medical team, Seth Rollins will be unable to compete at SummerSlam. We wish him a full and speedy recovery. No embellishments. No promises of a return date. No inspirational quote about fighting through adversity. Just facts. But here's the thing. It wasn't what Triple H said that caught people's attention. It was what he didn't. There was no, "we expect him back in 2025. There was no, "Rollins is already training again." There was no, "he's staying positive." That level of restraint? That absence of hope? That's not WWE style. That's final. And then, later that evening, Triple H posted a single image to his personal X account. No caption. No hashtags. Just a photo. Seth Rollins, sitting on the edge of a hospital bed. His hands clenched together. Eyes fixed forward. A knee brace strapped tightly across his right leg. Becky standing behind him, hand on his shoulder. No smiles. No lights. Just truth. And that image hit harder than any statement could. The wrestling world exploded. Fans flooded the comment section. "Please tell me he's okay. This can't be the end. I'm not ready to say goodbye to Seth." Even AEW stars posted reactions. One anonymous WWE superstar told Fightful, "That image broke me. I've shared the locker room with that man for a decade. And to see him like that? I didn't know how to process it." Another, a current Raw main eventer, admitted, "We all knew this day would come. We just didn't think it would come now." Behind the scenes, Triple H reportedly sat down with his core creative team and said the following: "We're entering uncharted territory. This is going to test everything we've built." Seth was the plan. He was the plan. But now we build a new one. And we do it without forgetting who carried us here. Those words were echoed in a private message he later sent to the Raw roster. The message ended with 3 words. Protect his legacy. Because that's what this silence was really about. Not hiding weakness. Not delaying PR. But protecting a legacy. Because for Triple H, Seth Rollins wasn't just a main eventer. He was the heartbeat of WWE's new era. The Iron Man of Monday Night Raw. And when that heartbeat skips, the whole system feels it. So now the silence has broken. The world knows the truth. Seth is out. Not for a night. Not for a pay-per-view. But possibly, for good. And Triple H? He's left to pick up the pieces. But not just the creative ones. The emotional ones too. Because when a general loses his best soldier, there's always a scar. Even when the cameras aren't rolling. By the time Seth Rollins was wheeled into that private orthopedic suite in Birmingham, Alabama, he already knew. Not because of what the trainers had told him. Not because of the crack he felt when he hit the mat. But because of the silence. The silence of the fans. The silence backstage. The silence in his own body. He couldn't feel his knee. And for a man who had built his life on movement, on the glorious rhythm of stomping feet, bouncing ropes, and perfectly timed landings, that silence was deafening. Seth Rollins was no stranger to pain. He'd torn his ACL before. He'd worked through cracked ribs, concussions, and a separated shoulder that nearly took him out of WrestleMania. But this time? This was different. This wasn't pain. This was failure. The morning after the injury, Seth was flown by private jet to Andrews Sports Medicine and Orthopedic Center, one of the most elite sports injury facilities in the world. A place trusted by NFL superstars, Olympic gold medalists, and, most importantly, WWE veterans. Dr. James Andrews himself wasn't scheduled that